Hello, I'm Jannarone, Editor-in-Chief of IPO Edge. Very happy to be back at the New York Stock Exchange with a good friend of our platform, Morgan Franklin. We've got a new friend from Morgan Franklin, Anil Persad, who's the Managing Director there. Anil, thanks for joining.
Oh, pleasure to be here, John. Thanks for having me.
Great, so a lot of excitement going on. We've got Kava pricing tonight, but let's step back and talk about what you specialize in, which is the runway up to the IPO. So what are some of the things that you advise companies who are thinking about going public, say, the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, so I think in terms of companies with that 12 to 18 month runway, some of the things that we like to emphasize are around the company's story, key performance indicators, and it really centers around giving the company enough time to, again, tell their story, their mission statement, how they intend to have a positive impact on their customers, and also assess the key performance metrics, their KPIs, if you will, in terms of what would be meaningful to their investors and their stakeholders, and also measuring that up against their peer companies within the industry, right? How do their peer companies use KPIs to evaluate both current and future performance? The other areas that I think are really critical for companies to think about in leading up to that IPO is around people, process, technology, right? So from a people standpoint, you want to make sure that you've got a good gauge on both internal talent as well as the external advisors that you're using to help you on that trajectory. You also want to consider sort of the processes internally, refining and truncating the timeline in terms of your close processes, taking steps on a monthly or quarterly cadence to streamline your close process. Creating checklists, timelines, and managing those close checklists and timelines, and also from a technology stack landscape, ensuring that you've got a good ERP, financial package, GL package in place that meets your needs, but also can scale, right, to accommodate a company's strategic growth. For example, if they wish to expand your footprint geographically beyond the US borders, can that ERP sustain and execute on that strategy? So yeah, you want to make sure that you're looking at how that technology integrates well with your other platforms and systems. So those are the things I think you would be mindful for.
No, that's really comprehensive, Anil. But I want to ask you something. We're obviously in a bit of a dry patch here. I just mentioned Kava's pricing tonight. Hopefully that's going to go well. But is the preparation process different than it was a few years ago, having seen what's happened? Are companies more careful in the steps they're taking to get ready? Because obviously we see a lot of deals in the last couple of years that did not trade well at all. Yeah.
I think so. I think companies are very mindful of the current landscape, right? There's a lot of challenges leading up to that IPO, right? First and foremost, it's around the audit preparation, right? So companies that are going IPO, they need to step up from a private company audit to that of a public company audit. There's a lot more rigor that goes into that. So having all the technical documentation done, taking stock of the technical merits and being able to operationalize that, that becomes important. Also in terms of forecasting and FP&A, companies haven't really flexed those muscles before, right? So creating that function is equally important. SOX, internal controls, especially as it pertains to the IT function within an organization, those are areas that companies also have challenges. And like I said earlier, right, getting information out of the system, especially as it pertains to quarterly reporting.
Right.
Oftentimes these companies, they've only done annual audits.
Yeah.
They haven't had the need to report on a quarterly basis. So things like cutoff, tax accruals, regular accruals, they haven't had a cadence to do those quarterly.
Right.
So that becomes pretty imperative now in terms of those challenges leading up to a public company.
If we were to identify the single biggest challenge or hurdle, do you think that would be it? Would it be adjusting to the quarterly reporting?
I think there's a number of them. And that certainly would be one of them, right? Like I mentioned earlier, automating as much as you can and driving just a lot of streamlining across the close and consolidation process. Those are challenges as well, right? Because companies want to make sure that they're looking towards a refined and streamlined close timeline of, 10 to 15 days at most
Yeah.
is that sort of sweet spot I would want to get companies towards.
Great. Now let's fast forward to after a company rings the bell. All the prep is paid off. Your stock's trading. What should companies be worried about or anticipating? In those first few months after they list.
Yeah, no, good question, John. Obviously it's a grueling road to becoming public, right? But now the challenges of living life as a public company is very different.
Yeah.
Right. So things that companies should be thinking about first and foremost is around, again, their control and SOX readiness, control environment, SOX readiness, and making sure they've identified the gaps within their processes and that they're spending the time to cure and remedy those gaps. Other areas, as I've mentioned before, is getting the right resources, right? Intellectual capital bench strength that has the tactical, technical, functional capabilities to help, again, streamline their close process becomes very critical. So those are, primarily two areas that I think, companies should really hone in on as they become a public company operating in that space. There's a lot of nuances that come with that.
Gotcha. Now, if I can, let's go back in time to the pre-prep phase. So let's say I'm going to take my company public. I'm shooting for 2 years from now. What are a couple things I should be thinking about doing, that far out to get the ball rolling?
Yeah. So one of the things that we advise companies to do, and they could do this with a third-party consultant, or they could do this internally, right? Is really take stock and do an honest, robust assessment of your current state, right? What are your current state processes around FP&A, accounting, finance, legal, operations, technology? And then have an eye on, what does the future state need to look like as a public company, right? What are those best practices that you should be implementing? Once you've sort of taken stock and inventory of those items, you can identify pretty easily what your gaps are, right? So then creating a streamlined process and project plan and timeline to remedy those gaps, I think is very critical in helping companies really prepare for that very long road ahead.
Great. All right, last question, Anil. This is a fun one. What is your favorite part about advising your clients?
I love working with all of my clients, and I think what we do well is not only provide them with the technical know-how, but we really try to advise them as business advisors on the most efficient and practical ways to operationalize the path forward to becoming a public company. I feel as though we provide value in terms of helping companies not only understand, interpret, and solve for what's in front of them, but what's yet to come. Right. And to me, that's where we can help companies become insanely successful beyond their wildest dreams. So that's where, for me, the passion lies, and that's why I love doing what we do with IPO-ready companies.
All right, Anil. Well, that's a great answer. Let's leave it there, I guess. Anil, really good to meet you here. One of many Morgan Franklin folks. I hope we work with you again in the future, but good to see you today, and thanks for joining.
Likewise.
John Jannarone here with IPO Edge.